I signed the deed to the lake house in secret. But the moment I saw Mark's parents unloading their moving truck in my driveway, I knew the piece I bought was a lie. "They're staying in the East Wing, Sarah," Mark said, dropping a heavy box of silver on my new quartz counter without asking. I didn't argue or scream. I just tapped the app on my phone to ensure the 6 hardwired cameras I'd hidden were already streaming to a private cloud. Mark thought I was being the good wife by staying quiet. He thought my silence was permission. But I hadn't spent 10 years working my way up a law firm to let a pair of retired scammers take my house. I knew why they lost their condo in the city, and I knew Mark was the one who signed the papers to help them hide the money. Mark says family loyalty is a sacred debt, even when that family is toxic. He tells me that if I don't let his parents move in, I'm the one breaking our marriage vows. But here's the secret. I found a life insurance policy in Mark's desk last night. It was taken out on me, and the primary beneficiary isn't Mark. It's his mother, Diane. Now you tell me, is it loyalty to stay and play the happy wife while your husband and his parents are literally betting on your death? Or do I have the right to burn their lives down before they can take mine? Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll see exactly what I found in their moving boxes that changed everything. Mark went back to the truck to get more boxes. His mother, Diane, didn't head for the guest room in the East Wing. She walked straight to my master bedroom and started throwing my clothes out of the closet. "The light is better in here for my migraines," she said. She wasn't asking. She was taking over. My voice tightened. "Diane, that's my room." She didn't even look at me. "You can afford a different room, Sarah. After all, you used our family name to get that big job, didn't you? It's only fair we get the best room." I realized then that Mark had told them I stole from his family to buy this house. He was making me the villain to cover his own tracks. I walked to the kitchen and found Bill, Mark's father, unscrewing the smoke detector. "Just checking the batteries," he muttered. He wasn't checking batteries. He was looking for cameras. He knew I didn't trust them. I went to the basement to check my server. The door was locked. I heard Mark talking to his dad inside. "Whisper." "Don't worry," Mark said. "We just need her to sign the joint asset paper tonight and the house is ours." I noticed a box labeled kitchen that had been left near the basement stairs. It was heavy, much heavier than plates. I nudged it with my toe and the tape popped open. Inside weren't dishes. It was a collection of high-end surveillance equipment, the kind used for professional wiretapping. My husband wasn't just bringing his parents. He was bringing a crew to wire my house for sound. I checked my phone again. A new notification popped up from a camera I'd hidden in the driveway. Bill was handing a thick envelope to a man in a black sedan I didn't recognize. The man didn't look like a mover. He looked like a process server. I realized the life insurance wasn't the only plan. They were preparing a legal case to have me declared unstable so Mark could take full control of the property. They weren't moving in for a few months. They were moving in to replace me. I felt a hand on my shoulder. I jumped, nearly dropping my phone. It was Diane. She was smiling, but her eyes were cold as ice. She held up a small silver key, the key to the safe deposit box my grandfather left me. "You dropped this in the master closet, dear," she whispered. "It's a good thing I found it before someone dishonest did." She knew exactly what was in that box, and she knew I couldn't call the police without exposing my own secret. I stood outside that door for a long time. I didn't knock. I didn't yell. I just walked back upstairs and started making dinner. I pulled out the expensive steaks I bought for a celebration. I acted like the perfect submissive wife. When Mark came up from the basement, he looked nervous. "Sarah, I didn't hear you." I smiled. "Just cooking, Mark. We should celebrate your parents being here." He looked relieved. He thought I was finally breaking. During dinner, Diane kept accidentally spilling wine on the new rug. Mark watched me to see if I'd snap. I just cleaned it up with a paper towel. I was waiting for my phone to buzz again. I knew Bill had turned off the Wi-Fi, but he didn't know I had a cellular backup in the attic. I excused myself to check the oven. I opened my app. Bill was in my home office. He was using a small tool to try and pick the lock on my filing cabinet. He wasn't looking for blankets. He was looking for my client list to pay off his gambling debts. I walked back into the room and sat down. Mark, I think we should put the house in a trust for our future. Mark's eyes lit up. He thought he had won without even trying. That's a great idea, Sarah. I actually have some papers that could help with that. He pulled a folder from his bag. It wasn't trust papers. It was a power of attorney. He wanted me to give him the right to sign for me, just to make things easier, he lied. I picked up the pen. But then I saw a name already written in pencil at the bottom. It was Diane's name. "Why is your mother's name on this, Mark?" I asked. The table went dead silent. Bill put his fork down. "Because, Sarah," he said, "Mark isn't the only one who knows your secret from the city. We know about the missing money from your old firm." The missing money. $2 million that had vanished during a merger. I hadn't taken it. Mark had. But he had used my computer to do it. He had framed me before we even moved into this house. "I didn't take that money," I said. Diane laughed. "The computer says you did, and if you don't sign this house over to the family trust tonight, those files go to the police. Mark is going to tell you forced him to help you." I looked at my husband. He wouldn't look at me. He was busy eating his steak. He had married me just to have a fall guy for his crimes. He didn't love me. He loved the equity in the house. "I need to think," I said. I stood up and walked to the patio. The lake was dark. I saw a light flash from the house across the water. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Gable. She was a retired court reporter. I had paid her a month ago to keep an eye on things. I signaled to her with my flashlight. 2 short blinks. That meant they're making the move. My phone buzzed in my pocket. "I have the audio from the kitchen window. I'm calling the lawyer now." Mark came out to the patio. He grabbed my arm. His grip was tight. "Sign the papers, Sarah. Don't be stupid. If you sign, we let you stay in the guest house. If you don't, you go to jail for 10 years. I looked at his hand on my arm. "Okay, Mark, I'll sign." I walked back inside and signed the papers. Mark and his parents were so happy they opened a bottle of my best wine. I sat there and watched them drink. They didn't know I had put a heavy sleep aid in the bottle. Within an hour, all 3 of them were passed out in the living room. I didn't waste a second. I went to the front door and opened it. A large moving truck pulled up with the lights off. It wasn't my movers. It was a crew I'd hired from a special company in the city. "Everything in the East Wing," I told them, "and everything in the master bedroom that doesn't belong to me. Put it all on the barge at the dock." I watched as they carried out Diane's expensive fur coats, Bill's tool sets, and the heavy safe they had brought with them. While they worked, I went to the basement. I opened the server rack. I pulled out the hard drive that had the footage of the dinner conversation. I also found the USB drive Bill had hidden in my office. I swapped it with a drive that contained a virus that would delete everything the moment it was plugged into a government computer. I went to Mark's bag. I found his real laptop. I opened it and found the hidden folder where he kept the records of the money he had stolen. He was so arrogant, he hadn't even encrypted it. I copied everything and sent it to my lawyer. By 3 a.m., the east wing of the house was completely empty. The barge was sitting in the middle of the lake, loaded down with all their stuff. I had a remote control for the barge's release valve. I went back to the living room. I sat in a chair across from Mark, and I waited for the sun to come up. I felt a strange kind of peace. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the one holding the remote. At 6 a.m., Mark started to wake up. He groaned and rubbed his eyes. "Sarah, why are you sitting in the dark?" I didn't answer. I just pointed to the window. He looked out. He saw the empty driveway. He saw the barge in the middle of the lake. He ran to the east wing and saw the bare floors. "What did you do? Where is our stuff? Where is the safe?" Diane and Bill woke up and started screaming. They ran to the deck. "The safe has our life savings in it! Get it back!" Diane yelled. I stood up and walked to the edge of the deck. I held up the remote. "You said family shares everything, Diane. I'm sharing your money with the lake." I pressed the button. The barge started to tilt. Slowly, their boxes and the heavy safe slid off the side and splashed into the deep water. "No!" Bill screamed. He tried to jump into the water, but the lake was freezing. He stopped at the edge. Mark turned on me. He looked like he wanted to hit me. "I'll kill you for this. I have the papers. I own this house now." I held up the folder. "You mean these papers? The ones I signed last night?" I opened the folder. The signature line didn't say my name. I had signed it with the name of the money launderer Mark had been working with. "You don't own a single brick of this house, Mark, but you do own a one-way ticket to a police station." The sound of sirens started to echo through the trees, a low wail that bounced off the surface of the lake. Mrs. Gable had called the police exactly when I told her to, at the first sign of physical aggression. Mark looked at the driveway, then back at me. He was trapped, and for the first time in 10 years, he looked small. "I'll tell them everything," Mark screamed, his voice cracking as he stepped towards me. "I'll tell them you did the merger fraud. I'll make sure you rot in a cell right next to mine." I didn't flinch. I just pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. I played the recording of him from last night, loud enough for his parents to hear. "She has no idea the bank is calling me. We just need her to sign and the house is ours." "The police already have the full file, Mark," I said, my voice steady. "They have the records I pulled from your hidden laptop. They have the audio of your dad admitting he planted evidence on my computer while you watched. They're not here for me. They're here for the family business." 2 patrol cars pulled into the gravel driveway, kicking up dust that hung in the morning air. The retired sheriff, a man named Miller, who I'd done pro bono work for, stepped out first. He didn't look like he was coming for brunch. He looked at Mark and shook his head. "Mark Miller, you're under arrest for fraud, extortion, and filing a false report." Diane tried to throw herself in front of the sheriff. "He's a good boy. This woman is crazy. She's the one who stole our house. She's been gaslighting us since we got here." The sheriff didn't even blink. "Ma'am, we have a warrant for your arrest, too. The condo you lost wasn't seized by a bank. It was part of a tax evasion scheme we've been tracking for 18 months. We found your signature on the shell company's bank records this morning." Bill fell to his knees on the deck, his face buried in his hands. He looked at the water where the safe had disappeared. "Everything is gone. We have nothing left. That safe was our retirement." I looked down at him, and for a second I felt a flicker of pity, but then I remembered the USB drive. "You never had anything, Bill. You just had a talent for taking things that belong to other people. Retirement is for people who actually worked." As the officers led Mark away in handcuffs, he stopped in front of me. His face was a mask of pure hate. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I'll get out," he hissed. "And when I do, I'm coming back for this house. I'll burn it to the ground with you inside." I leaned in close to his ear, close enough to smell the stale wine on his breath. "The house is already sold, Mark. I sold it to the State Conservation Board. They're turning it into a public park. There won't be a house to burn, just a playground where you're not invited." That was the final lie I needed him to believe. I wasn't selling the house, but I wanted his last thought as the jail doors closed to be that he had lost every single brick. I watched the patrol car pull down the driveway, the tires crunching on the stones I had paid for. I watched the dust settle back onto the ground. Mrs. Gable walked over from next door. She was holding a tray of coffee and a small digital recorder. "You okay, Sarah? That was quite a show." I took a cup and nodded. I'm fine. I just need to hire a diver. She laughed, a warm, genuine sound. To get that safe, it must be heavy. I smiled and took a sip of the coffee. No, the safe was empty. I filled it with the bricks from the old fireplace they tore down in the city. I moved the actual money to a private account weeks ago. The safe I had put on the barge was a decoy. I had known their greed would be their undoing. I had used their own obsession with the legacy to make them watch their dreams sink to the bottom of the lake. I had let them stay just long enough to gather the evidence I needed to make sure they could never come back. I walked back into the East Wing. The rooms were empty and echoed with every step. I looked at the spot where Diane had thrown my clothes. I felt a sense of power I hadn't felt in years. I picked up my phone and called a contractor I'd found on the coast. I want to tear down the entire East Wing, I told him. I want to replace the walls with floor-to-ceiling glass. I want to see the lake from every angle. I'm done with dark corners. I went to the kitchen and found the original power of attorney papers Diane tried to force me to sign. I didn't shred them. I took them out to the fire pit on the deck. I lit a single match and watched the edges curl and blacken. The names of the people who tried to destroy me turned into ash and blew away toward the water. I realized then that the cameras hadn't just saved my property, they had saved my mind. They had shown me that the loving family I thought I had was just a group of predators waiting for a weakness. I didn't need a husband who viewed me as a bank account. I didn't need parents-in-law who viewed me as a threat to their survival. I walked down to the dock and sat on the edge, letting my feet dangle over the water. The lake was perfectly still now, like a sheet of glass. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the master key to the East Wing. I looked at it for a moment, then tossed it into the deep water. I didn't need it. I had already called the locksmith to change every single cylinder in the house. My lawyer called 10 minutes later. Sarah, it's done. Mark's confession was recorded by the body cams. He tried to cut a deal by giving up his father's gambling associates. The whole house of cards is falling. You're completely clear. I closed my eyes and breathed in the smell of the pine trees. For the first time, the air felt clean. I saw a small ripple in the distance, near where the barge had tilted. It was a single piece of paper floating on the surface, the joint asset waiver. It was blank. I never signed the real one. I only signed the decoy I made. Mark went to jail for a document that didn't even exist. I walked back into my house and locked the heavy front door. I checked the monitor one last time. The cameras were still rolling, but for the first time, I wasn't looking for intruders. I was just watching the sun go down. The room felt huge. It felt like a future. He never saw it coming.